former Michigan State star, Adrien Payne, was shot and killed in Orlando, Florida.
Adrien Payne died trying to protect someone he loved.
Lorenzen's spirit had been with me the whole time. He can lay down like everybody else.
And Lorenzen Wright was betrayed by the person who was supposed to love him most. But for the families left behind, there is no closure, only memory. And these two are not even the most disturbing stories on this list. We are going to tell you about the most tragic murders in NBA history. Bison Dele. Born Brian Carson Williams on April 6, 1969, in Fresno, California, to a singer-father of African-American and Cherokee heritage, he changed his name in 1998 to Bison Dele to honor his native ancestry, a deeply personal act in a league that rarely encouraged such individuality. He attended Bishop Gorman High School in Las Vegas and St. Monica High School in Santa Monica before going to the University of Maryland for a year and then transferring to Arizona, where he earned first-team All-Pac-10 honors in 1991. The Orlando Magic selected him 10th overall in the 1991 NBA draft. He went on to play for the Magic, the Denver Nuggets, the Los Angeles Clippers, and then the Chicago Bulls, where, in 1997, he won an NBA championship as a key backup on Michael Jordan's legendary Bulls squad. From there, it was the Detroit Pistons, where he peaked at 16.2 points and 8.9 rebounds per game in 1997 to 98. Here is what sharing a post-game locker room with Bison Dele looked like. A man utterly comfortable in his own skin, articulate, thoughtful, and deeply unconventional, even for the NBA. He was the kind of player who answered questions on his own terms, who refused to reduce the game, or anyone in it, to simple comparisons.
I don't really like comparing players because, I don't know, it's like snowflakes. They're all unique, different.
And then he extended that philosophy with the kind of gentle precision that made you understand exactly who this man was.
It's not, in the history of the world, never been two snowflakes alike, so certainly not going to be two players alike.
In 1999, Bison Dele walked away from a $36 million contract offer and retired at the age of 30. He traveled the world, earned a pilot's license, played multiple musical instruments, and sailed the Pacific on his 60-foot catamaran, the Hakuna Matata. He had, by every possible measure, chosen life over basketball, and he had done it on his own terms. His older brother, Miles DeBoard, had a different relationship with Bison's freedom and finances, a relationship that had grown increasingly strained and volatile. Around July 7, 2002, Bison Dele, his girlfriend, Serena Carlin, and the boat's skipper, Bertrand Saldo, were all allegedly murdered by Miles DeBoard aboard the catamaran near Tahiti. Their bodies weighted and dumped into the sea. Bison was 33 years old. The catamaran was later found with bullet holes that had been deliberately patched over. Miles DeBoard was arrested in the United States for fraud. He had been using Bison's identity to drain his bank accounts. Before he could be made to answer for the murders, DeBoard died in custody from a deliberate insulin overdose. No bodies were ever recovered from the sea. The FBI and French authorities confirmed the triple homicide theory, but without bodies and without a living perpetrator, the case exists in a strange, permanent legal limbo. The next legend on our list is Lorenzen Wright. Lorenzen Wright was born November 4th, 1975 in Oxford, Mississippi, and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, a city that would become both his greatest stage and ultimately his final resting place. His father, a former professional player, was paralyzed by a gunshot wound. Lorenzen grew up with that reality. Violence had already entered his family before he could walk, and still chose basketball. He attended Booker T. Washington High School in Memphis and starred at the University of Memphis, where he earned consensus All-American honors in 1996. The Los Angeles Clippers selected him 7th overall in the 1996 NBA draft. Over 13 professional seasons he played for the Clippers, the Atlanta Hawks, the Memphis Grizzlies, as a beloved hometown hero, the Sacramento Kings, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. He averaged 8.0 points and 6.4 rebounds per game across 778 career games, peaking at 12.4 points per game with the Hawks in 2000 to 2001. He was also a father to 7 children, and a man who founded a scholarship fund after the tragic loss of his young daughter to SIDS. He gave back to Memphis. Memphis gave back to him. By 2010, Lorenzen and his wife Shara had separated. On July 19, 2010, Lorenzen Wright was shot 11 times. His body was found 10 days later in a wooded area and swamp outside Memphis. The investigation that followed would take years of heartbreak, silence, and waiting. When the full picture finally emerged, It was gut-wrenching. His ex-wife, Wright, had orchestrated a contract killing, enlisting an accomplice named Billy Ray Turner for a $1 million life insurance payout. The man Memphis loved, killed for $1 million by the mother of his children. When the guilty verdict against Billy Ray Turner was finally read aloud in that courtroom, the weight of years of waiting was visible on every face in the room.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in count 1 of the indictment.
Lorenzen's mother, Deborah Merriam, had sat in that courtroom and faced the man convicted of killing her son. She had waited a decade for that moment, and when the judge addressed her directly, it was one of the most emotionally raw moments the case produced.
Ms. Merriam, you have lost a lot. You've lost your son. I will urge you to consider and remember the good things.
And Deborah Merriam, who had refused to let her son's name be buried alongside his body, found the words that said everything.
Lorenzen's spirit had been with me the whole time. He can lay down like everybody else and just rest.
Wright pleaded guilty to facilitation of murder and was sentenced to 30 years. Billy Ray Turner was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy and sentenced to life in prison. Convictions came between 2019 and 2022, more than a decade after Lorenzen was killed. Memphis remembered him. The city that loved him refused to let the story die. And in the end, justice, slow, painful, imperfect, arrived. Our list continues to Adrien Payne. And then there is Adrien Payne, the most recent name on this list, and the one that should still feel raw because it was just 3 years ago. Born February 19, 1991, in Dayton, Ohio, Payne grew up in Jefferson Township, led his high school team to a state championship, and earned parade All-American honors before heading to Michigan State University, where he became one of the most beloved players in the history of the Spartan program. At Michigan State, he earned 2 All-Big Ten selections and set an NCAA tournament record by hitting all 17 of his free throw attempts in a single game in 2014. But he went through his college career dealing with something that would have broken most players.
I was tired and I didn't know why. I'm thinking like in the game, I'm like, man, I'm tired. I just ran up down the court like one time and I'm exhausted. So I'm like, why am I so tired?
He had been playing through undiagnosed mononucleosis for much of his final season, fighting through an illness that was quietly draining him, without complaint, without excuses, because that was simply who Adrien Payne was as a competitor. But even in the midst of preparing for the biggest professional opportunity of his life, what Adrien Payne spoke about most was not basketball. The Atlanta Hawks selected him 15th overall in the 2014 NBA draft. He played for the Hawks, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Orlando Magic, appearing in 107 NBA games and averaging 4.0 points and 2.9 rebounds per game. After being waived in 2018, he played internationally, winning titles in Greece, France, China, and Lithuania before returning to the United States. And then, on a Monday morning in Orlando, the news broke.
Shifting gears, former Michigan State star Adrien Payne was shot and killed in Orlando, Florida, early Monday morning, the Orange County Sheriff's Office said.
On May 9th, 2022, Adrien Payne was shot and killed in Orlando after going to the home of a man named Lawrence Doherty to intervene in a domestic dispute. He had not gone there to start a fight. He had gone there because someone he cared about needed someone to show up. Doherty claimed self-defense, citing Payne's physical size as justification for firing the weapon. A jury rejected that claim entirely. Doherty was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison in 2025. His former Michigan State teammate Draymond Green paid tribute to him on social media the morning the news broke. Adrien Payne was 31 years old. He died the way he had lived, showing up for somebody else. Then we have Anthony Grundy. Anthony Montriace Grundy was born April 15, 1979 in Louisville, Kentucky, a city with more basketball talent per square mile than it ever gets credit for. He grew up in the West End's Russell neighborhood, in the Beecher Terrace housing projects, raised by his mother, Yolanda, in a household held together by faith and family. He was a member of Bethel Baptist Church. He started his high school career at Warren Central in Bowling Green before transferring to Hargrave Military Academy in Virginia for his senior year, a move that sharpened both his game and his discipline. He then committed to NC State, where he arrived as a bench warmer and graduated as something approaching a legend. By the time his senior year wrapped in 2002, Grundy had transformed himself into a first-team All-ACC selection, earning All-ACC defensive team honors and becoming the first Wolfpack player in program history to lead his team in scoring, rebounds, assists, steals, and three-pointers made, all in the same season. He helped end a decade-long NCAA tournament drought for that program. He was, by any reasonable measure, a star. The 2002 NBA draft did not draft him. Undrafted. Passed over by every team despite a senior season that most players would sacrifice years of their career to have. For most young men, that's the end of the road. For Grundy, it was barely the beginning of the journey. He spent the next 12 years as a global basketball nomad. Greece, Turkey, Germany, Cyprus, Israel, Venezuela, Iran, the Philippines, Italy, Sweden, carrying his game from continent to continent, competition to competition, winning wherever he went. He led the entire Greek league in scoring during the 2007 to 2008 season, averaging 21.5 points per game. He won a PBA Governor's Cup championship in the Philippines in 2011. He was, in country after country, the best player on the floor. The NBA call came eventually too. 12 games with the Atlanta Hawks in the 2005 to 2006 season on 10-day contracts, averaging 4.3 points per game. Not the career the talent warranted, but real, undeniable, tangible proof that at his best, Anthony Grundy belonged in that building. By the time basketball was behind him, Grundy had returned to Louisville, back to the city and the family that made him. His post-playing life was turbulent in ways that the sport had never prepared him for. He had multiple DUI arrests and served 2 years in prison beginning in 2017, after pleading guilty to a felony DWI charge and multiple probation violations. He was working to rebuild. In June of 2019, he was charged in connection with a fatal hit and run on Dixie Highway, in which a pedestrian was struck and killed. He turned himself in. He pleaded not guilty. His attorney, longtime friend E. Lee Turner Jr., was still in his corner. People who knew him described a man who, despite everything, was talking about his future, about getting back into the community, working with kids, doing something meaningful with the second chance he was building. He made his final social media post on the morning of November 14, 2019. He was asking his friends to wish his mother a happy birthday. That night, Louisville Metro Police were called to a domestic disturbance on the 1000 block of Muhammad Ali Boulevard, near his mother's home, at approximately 6:30 p.m. Officers arrived to find Anthony Grundy suffering from multiple stab wounds. He was transported to the University of Louisville Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 7:10 p.m. The Jefferson County Coroner's Office listed the cause of death as multiple sharp force injuries to the body. He was 40 years old. It was his mother's birthday. Louisville Metro Police opened a homicide investigation, and while a suspect was present at the scene when officers arrived and was taken in for questioning, no charges were ever formally filed. After this, we have Tyler Honeycutt. Tyler Dion. Honeycutt was born July 15, 1990 in Sylmar, California, a neighborhood tucked into the far north end of the San Fernando Valley, the kind of place that produces athletes quietly and sends them into the world without much fanfare. He was raised primarily by his single mother, Liza Stazzle, and from the very beginning, his relationship with basketball was almost obsessive in its devotion. His high school coach at Sylmar High, Bort Escoto, remembered a young man who would sneak into the school gym late at night just to get up extra shots. Not because a trainer told him to, not because scouts were watching, but because being better at basketball was the closest thing he had to a prayer. And the thing that drove all of it, Escoto said, was love for his mother. The boy's biggest goal in life was to earn enough money to make her life easier. At UCLA, that talent erupted into something genuinely special. Honeycutt was named to the Pac-10 All-Freshman team in his first year, leading the entire team in rebounding as a rookie, then followed that up with co-MVP honors and a first-team All-Pac-10 selection as a sophomore, averaging 12.8 points per game and leading the conference in blocks with 2.1 per game. The Sacramento Kings made him the 35th overall pick in the 2011 NBA draft. He was an NBA player. He made it. The dream that had kept him in that empty gymnasium at midnight was real. His professional career in the NBA was limited. 24 games over 2 seasons with the Kings, hampered by injuries and stints in the D-League, before eventually being traded to Houston and released. But overseas, an entirely different and genuinely impressive career unfolded. He won a Euro Cup championship with Khimki Moscow in 2015, dominated EuroLeague competition, played for elite clubs in Turkey, and became exactly the kind of player that European basketball scouts dream about. Long, athletic, versatile, and capable of changing a game in multiple ways on both ends of the floor. On the afternoon of July 6th, 2018, Liza Stazzle called 911. She called 3 times, telling dispatchers that her son was having a psychotic break, that he had firearms in the house, a shotgun and a pistol, and that she was terrified he was going to harm himself. She gave police the keys to the house. She told them the shotgun was empty. She told them the pistol held only 3 bullets. She told them her son had not committed any crime. She told them he was a good kid. She asked, begged for mental health support. What arrived was a full armed police response. And what followed was an 11-hour LAPD SWAT standoff at his Sherman Oaks home on Tyrone Avenue. Officers tried to reach him by phone. They tried to make visual contact through windows. They asked him to come out. At one point, Honeycutt fired a shot through a bedroom window that struck the wall next to an officer, who returned fire without hitting him. Then silence. Hours of silence. In the early morning hours of July 7th, SWAT finally entered the residence. The Los Angeles County coroner ruled Tyler Honeycutt's death a suicide, a self-inflicted close-range gunshot wound to the head. He was 27 years old. And that is where the official record ends, but it is not where his mother's reckoning ends. In 2019, Liza Stazzle filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the LAPD and the city of Los Angeles, alleging that officers failed to adequately de-escalate a mental health crisis, failed to provide prompt medical intervention, and that the department's negligence was a direct contributing factor in her son's death. She had given them every tool they needed to bring him out safely. She had handed them the keys. She had told them about the bullets. The Canyon-News.com coverage of the lawsuit made it plain. There are families in this country for whom the story of what happened doesn't end with the coroner's report. For Liza Stazzle, it never ended at all. Call the death what the coroner calls it if you want. What she calls it is preventable. What she calls it is a failure. What she calls it is the loss of her child, the boy who snuck into the gym at midnight to get better, just so he could take care of her. And then we have Andre Emmett. Andre Emmett was born August 27, 1982, in Dallas, Texas, the only son and only boy among 8 children, raised by his single mother, Regina Oliver. After his father's early death left the family without its patriarch, his 7 sisters worshipped him. His mother described him as their pride and joy. He played football first, actually. That was his first love. But basketball was where he was extraordinary, and extraordinary was what the world eventually demanded of him. He attended Carter High School in Dallas, then enrolled at Texas Tech University, where he played for the legendary and legendarily exacting Bob Knight for 3 of his 4 collegiate seasons. What he accomplished there was genuinely historic. By the time his collegiate career ended in 2004, Emmett had become Texas Tech's all-time leading scorer with 2,256 points. At the time, 3rd in the history of the entire Big 12 Conference. He earned unanimous first-team All-Big 12 honors as both a junior and a senior. The Seattle Supersonics made him the 35th overall pick in the 2004 NBA draft, then traded his rights to the Memphis Grizzlies, where he played 8 games in the 2004 to 2005 season. He later had a brief stint with the New Jersey Nets. The NBA never fully materialized, but the G League, the overseas circuit across Europe and China, and eventually the Big 3 League gave him a platform where he was more than just a name on a roster. He was beloved. He was electric. He was, in every meaningful sense of the word, thriving in the years before his death. On the night of September 22nd, 2019, he texted his mother. He said, "Mom, I love you always." She told the court later it struck her as odd at the time, like something that didn't quite fit the rhythm of their usual conversation. She didn't know then why it felt the way it did. At approximately 2:30 in the morning on September 23rd, 2019, Andre Emmett was sitting in his SUV in the driveway of his old East Dallas home when 3 men who had followed him from a nearby nightclub approached the vehicle and demanded his jewelry, 2 chains, a watch. He gave them what they asked for. He tried to run. A passerby called 911 after finding Emmett lying injured several hundred feet from his own home. He did not survive. Dallas police released home security camera footage of the crime, captured by both Emmett's doorbell camera and a neighbor's, to help identify the suspects. 3 men were ultimately charged, and 3 years later, justice arrived. Slowly, partially, but it arrived.
New developments this afternoon in the capital murder trial of Larry Jenkins. Today, a jury found Jenkins guilty of that charge.
A Dallas County jury deliberated for approximately 4 hours before finding Larry Daquan Jenkins guilty of capital murder in September 2022. Prosecutors had placed Jenkins at both the nightclub and at Emmett's home that night using cell phone data. A witness identified him as the one who pulled the trigger. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Of the other 2 men charged, Keith Johnson took a plea deal and was sentenced to 20 years in prison for aggravated robbery. Michael Lucky's capital murder charge was dismissed after prosecutors determined there was insufficient evidence to proceed. Following Jenkins' conviction, there was accountability. Not perfect, not complete, but real. The most devastating moment in the entire story of Andre Emmett's death wasn't the verdict, though. It was the 15 minutes that came immediately after it. Regina Oliver, who had buried her son, raised his daughters, built an entire community of memory and love around everything he stood for, and sat through every single day of that trial, walked to the stand, and delivered a victim impact statement directly to the man who had taken her child.
And so I say that because I've been through a lot. My family has been through a lot.
She looked him in the face, and she told him what he had destroyed. She told the court what it felt like to have the center of your world taken from you in a driveway at 2:30 in the morning over a chain and a watch.
I have lost half of my heart. Half of my heart is gone.
And then, in the moment that nobody who was in that courtroom will ever forget, she told Jenkins she was praying for him, that she was sincerely asking God to help him get his life together, that she would carry the grief forever, but she would carry it in faith.
And what did you want from him, jury? A watch.
Think about what she's saying. Think about the 3 years of grief that lived between the question and the asking of it.
He gave you what you asked for. But there wasn't enough.
He gave them everything. It was never going to be enough. And lastly, Malik Sealy. Malik Sealy was born February 1st, 1970, in the Bronx, New York, the kind of borough that stamps its identity into every person it produces. A city inside a city where the basketball was played with a specific ferocity that didn't exist anywhere else, and everybody knew it. He was named after Malcolm X, after Malik Shabazz, because his father had served as a bodyguard for Malcolm X, and the name carried that history with it from the very beginning. He attended St. Nicholas of Tollentine High School in the Bronx, where he was part of a senior class that went 30-1 and won the state championship, alongside future college standouts Brian Reese and Adrien Autry. He was, even then, something special. At St. John's University, that something special had room to fully announce itself. By the time Sealy finished his collegiate career, he had accumulated 2,401 points, second all-time in the history of St. John's basketball. Not a program with a quiet history. Second all-time. The Indiana Pacers made him the 14th overall pick in the 1992 NBA draft. A lottery pick, a genuine first-round talent, a 6'8" small forward/shooting guard with the kind of versatility and basketball IQ that coaches spend their entire careers searching for. He played for the Pacers, then the Los Angeles Clippers, then the Detroit Pistons, 8 seasons total, averaging 10.1 points per game in 23.8 minutes over his career, the kind of steady, reliable production that keeps a roster healthy and a coaching staff sane. He was averaging 11.3 points per game off the bench in his final season, a genuine contributor on a legitimate playoff contender, surrounded by Kevin Garnett, who was becoming one of the best players on the planet. Sealy became a mentor to Garnett during those years, a steadying presence, a man who had seen more of the league and the world and wanted to help the younger player navigate it. He was also, quietly, doing things that had nothing to do with basketball. He was an aspiring actor. He had a major role in the 1996 film Eddie, alongside Whoopi Goldberg, playing a talented but selfish basketball player, and had made appearances in television shows including The Sentinel and Diagnosis, Murder. He designed ties and clothing and ran his own company, Malik Sealy the 21st Inc. He was one of 5 children, and every single one of the Sealy siblings earned a college degree, a point of deep family pride in a household where that achievement meant everything. He was survived by his wife, his son, and his parents, Sydney and Ann. On the night of May 20th, 2000, Malik Sealy was driving home from Kevin Garnett's 24th birthday party in downtown Minneapolis. The night was over, the celebration was done, and he was making a drive he had made before, heading home on Highway 100 in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. And then, out of the dark, a pickup truck came at him, traveling the wrong way down the highway, head on. The collision was catastrophic. Sealy's SUV did not have an airbag. He had no seatbelt. He was killed at the scene. He was 30 years old. The driver of that truck was 43-year-old Suksanguan Fengsin. He survived. His blood alcohol content at the time of the crash was 0.19%, nearly double the legal limit of 0.10% in Minnesota at that time. He pleaded guilty to criminal vehicular homicide and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He was released in 2003, 3 years served, for ending the life of Malik Sealy. And then, As if the story hadn't already said enough about who this man was, Feng Xin was arrested again in 2006, driving drunk, weaving in and out of lanes, with a blood alcohol level of 0.21%. He went back to court. And in 2008, a judge handed him an 8-year prison sentence. At the time, the longest sentence for a non-fatal drunk driving conviction in the entire history of Minnesota. 8 years for a second offense, because the man who killed Malik Sealy got out of prison and got behind a wheel again and did the same thing again. Malik Sealy's funeral was held at Riverside Church in New York, where 3,000 people gathered to say goodbye. His college coach Lou Carnesecca delivered the eulogy. Kevin Garnett served as a pallbearer. The Timberwolves retired his number 2 jersey in his honor. And Kevin Garnett, who has never stopped grieving the loss of the man he called his best friend, had Malik's name tattooed on his right arm, wrote "To Malik" on the tongue of his signature sneakers, and changed his uniform number to number 2 when he was traded to Brooklyn in 2013 because he wanted to carry the name with him wherever he went. If any name on this list was new to you today, look them up, read about them, talk about them, because the only thing worse than a life cut short is a life that nobody bothers to remember. Subscribe, like the video, and we'll see you in the next one.